The running back position in Dynasty is pretty much impossible to nail down with the volatility that comes with the running back position and the values at running back. There are like numerous different strategies you can take with handling running backs in Dynasty for your team. So which one's the right one? What do you do with running backs? Do you have all old veterans? Do you invest heavy in the top end running backs? Do you find the middle ground in between? We're going to tell you for each type of team how you should be handling your running backs in our general running back research and strategy and kind of what we've found as we've handled the running back position for a couple years now in Dynasty Fantasy Football. So the one thing you need to know about running backs in Dynasty is when you think you're safe with running back value, you are almost never safe.
Never safe.
Trust us, because we've gotten burnt 1 million times on running backs, on whether that's running backs for young guys, rookies. You've got all these new and up and coming running backs, or it's veterans,
cornerstones,
or second string running backs. You're almost never safe. The volatility at the running back position from a value standpoint is absolutely ridiculous. And so, again, you need to know kind of what to do here. And not only is running back the least valuable position in Dynasty, like I mentioned, it's also the most volatile. So, like when you're rebuilding, for example, what should you be doing with your running backs? Because we always tell people, like when we get our hard rebuilds, when we get even our like 1 year reloads, like do not invest in running backs. We're talking about building a value portfolio. We're talking about building our team. We definitely do not want to have a bunch of running back investment, because while there is a small chance you hit big and you get a lot of value from it, there is a much, much larger chance that you do not hit big and that these running backs lose a lot of value if you invested them at any significant value level. So typically for rebuilding teams, we talk about how we don't want to invest in running backs, with the exception obviously being
rookies. Rookies are the big exception here, because they're really, you can treat them almost like their own position. Since their value is naturally so insulated coming right out the gate, you know that like most running backs that you're getting in the second or third round are going to have, late day 2, day 3 draft capital. So they already, like, if you miss on a running back that you invest in at that price, what did you really miss out on in the long run? Not much, because what we've noticed from our rookie research that we've done, and we did this research going into this year's rookie draft, is that rookie running backs are actually some of the most effective investments to make in those late rounds in your rookie draft. So as a rebuild, if you're taking rookie running backs, that's completely fine, because you're counting on them appreciating in value. Almost no position like the running back position increases in value as quickly and as suddenly as running backs do.
Correct.
Because of how volatile it is. Like, we always talk about volatility in a negative light with the running back position. You can take advantage of the running back position as a rebuild in a positive light. You can take advantage of that volatility, because as many times as you see a total cliff, you're going to see a total spike.
There's almost it almost happens directly that way, because when you think about it, when you have a running back on a team that loses value, we overreact so much to second string or backup running backs that usually it's a teeter-totter. You have this running back. So let's think of an example here. Let's think of Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce had 7th, 8th, 9th round value last year. And as soon as his value went in the toilet, whose value went up in Dynasty? Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary was getting the snaps. He was getting production. He ended up getting a contract. You saw their values completely flip-flop, right? And so it's almost like for every action, there is a equal and opposite reaction. Right? So
look at that.
It's the law of running backs in Dynasty.
Yeah. And look, the reason that's the case is because of how sparse running backs are right now in Dynasty. Like, we're kind of in this weird middle stage of previously, like 3 to 4 years ago, you had a really solid core group of running backs that you were pretty comfortable with. And the volatility obviously happened like any other year, but you had a good idea of all the guys from like 1 to 16, even like 1 to 20. And now it's like after 5 or 6, it really is a crapshoot. You rank whoever the frick you want, because we really don't know what's going to happen. No. And there hasn't really been anyone that's established themselves to be on top outside of those top 3 running backs. So with that in mind, just know that there are going to continue to be guys like Zamir White that have value, even though we all know, even if you deny it, we all know deep down that Zamir White is not going to have long-term value. We just know it, but it's the vacated volume. It's the fact that he has opportunity this year. And for a lot of contenders that are desperate for running backs and for production, they're willing to pay that price.
And the proof is in the pudding with that, because like none of you last year were clamoring at us to like, you're sleeping on Zamir White. He's going to take that backfield. He's a sleeper. He's got a really good skill set. Nobody talked about Zamir White until he had the opportunity, right? And so when it's opportunity based like that, I mean, you know that's the case. Because a lot of people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Well, Zamir White, again, it's all opportunity based. And I will say with running backs, the best way as we get into this video to make sure that you have the right running back strategy for your team, obviously, is going to be getting a team blueprint. You get a team blueprint free when you sign up for the annual Mother Flocker tier at flockfantasy.com/domain and you use code domain. But now, not only do you get one when you sign up with code domain and you are an annual member, you can buy as many of them as you want. If you're not a member, you can go buy a team blueprint. Now, you do get a significant discount when you are a domain member. You get cheaper team blueprints. You get big discounts. But we can sell as many of these as we can now. So if you have gotten a team blueprint and you want a follow-up blueprint or you want a new team, or if you have never gotten a blueprint and you want to come join over 700 committed active Dynasty players on our Discord over in our community, you get as many team blueprints as you want when you purchase them. Like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain when you sign up and choose some other Flocker tier to get a free one. But
I feel like we need to play that song in the background when we do that announcement.
what song?
Any way you want it.
Nice. Yes. Journey.
Yeah.
We'd probably get copyright strike, but
Yes.
yeah, but
maybe I'll get copywritten for that.
you might actually
Since,
you might
like-
because the live stream that we did. Yeah.
I know.
But
that was impressive.
That was
but
impressive.
yeah, look, there should be very little continuity in your running back room year after year. What do I mean by this? This is a big point that we're going to make in this video. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest in running back at a certain point in time. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be happy about the points that you're going to probably score going into maybe 2024, 2025, whatever. But the point is, don't get stuck holding the same running backs year after year. It will screw you. It will absolutely screw you. Even the people that have had Christian McCaffrey since his rookie year, they went through the ebbs and flows of his value when he was out for 2 straight years. He lost significant value. And this is why running back investment is the definition of playing the market. You have to constantly be on your toes. Constantly. Now, the reason I say this is because we've already established the volatility, but it's really, really wise to not count due to the volatility that someone's going to just consistently produce year in and year out. And honestly, it's not a great idea to just predict who is and who isn't going to produce, because at the end of the day, we don't really know. We don't know as much as you don't know. And we can take shots and we can take, flyers on these guys that we think might be able to produce. But at the end of the day, it really should be based on value. And when you're worried about the value of a running back, whether they are going into the 4th or 5th year of their career, when you know that their long-term outlook isn't super promising, and you know that since they're approaching their 4th year, that people are going to start doubting them and their longevity because maybe they're not going to get a bell cow workload. Case in point, Travis Etienne. But what I want you to do is don't just look at the current value of running backs and extrapolate that down 2 to 3 years down the line, right? Even for your 24-year-old running backs, everyone sees the number 24. They're like, oh, he's so young. Oh, he's going to last forever. Guys, he hasn't accomplished anything until he's gotten a multi-year deal. And how many running backs, after they have finished their rookie deal, don't get a significant second opportunity?
most of them, half of them or more.
Most. So honestly, what you should be doing is like when you're kind of wheeling and dealing and trying to not keep the same assets at the running back position on your team year after year, you want to look for those guys that have 2 to 3 year guaranteed situations. I'm not just talking about rookie deal running backs. I'm not just talking about that, because I'm just as worried about a rookie running back, or I'm just as worried about a running back going into the 4th year of his deal as I am a 26-year-old running back in the 1st year of a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
Like that's something that isn't often touched on right now. And the reason that's the case is because you look at Dynasty in 3-year windows. Everyone has been telling you, all these creators have been telling you that you always want running backs on a rookie deal. To me, I want running backs that score me points and win me leagues for the next 2 years. Because I'm trying to win for the next 2 years. I'm trying to win for 2 out of the next 3 years. Past 3 years in my Dynasty League, I have no idea what's going to happen to me or the league. The league might not even exist.
True.
Running backs themselves are a Dynasty lifetime.
It's true.
Wide receivers, quarterbacks, they span multiple lifetimes, but like we should be treating running backs, the productive ones, like they're going to be productive for the next couple of years, because most of the time they are. Like Alvin Kamara, people have been out on Alvin Kamara for the last 2 years, and he's still winning people leagues. Well, I want to get a year. I want to get out a year early instead of being out a year late. You got out 3 years early.
You did. You did. Most people did too. I mean, with running back, it's the definition of playing the market. Like, you've got to stay on your toes. We talk about, the analogies of the stock market a lot, but if you're taking each position and categorizing it, like giving it a parallel to the stock market, I would say running back position are your most volatile, most risky stocks, right? They are actual. You're investing in individual companies, day trading, right? You can talk about quarterbacks being more of a long-term stable thing like a mutual fund or something like that. But your day trading happens in your running backs. And so when you talk about the day trading that we apply to Dynasty Fantasy Football, this is a perfect, running backs is a ton of that. It encapsulates everything that is day trading in Dynasty Fantasy Football, which is what Dynasty has become these days. And so, when you're talking about any position in Dynasty, including running back, it's all about accumulating value. And it becomes extremely hard at this position because the value is so volatile. And so, if all of your current value is in running back, that needs to change. Yeah. It needs to change. We have one of our team archetypes is running back heavy. It's probably our least common one, I think, but it still occurs.
It is very uncommon. Yeah.
But it still occurs, and we're like, you've got to diversify here. You've got to get off these running backs. Yeah. And a lot of times, really what it is with people in running backs is you see a lot of people who have played Dynasty or Fantasy for a really long time. Back when either they played in 1 QB leagues, even 1 QB leagues through the mid 2010s. Running backs ran those leagues. Fantasy leagues, dynasty leagues, running backs ran those leagues. And then again, after that 2016, 2017 wave of guys came in where you had all of those dominant running backs for that big, long stretch of time, Dynasty was, you look at a Dynasty draft from 2018 even. Look how many running backs are going in the first round. It's ridiculous. Dalvin Cook was going in the first round. I mean, you've got all of those guys that were up there. So let's talk about what you should do based on what type of team you have in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And let's start with hard rebuild. Don't even try it. Don't try it. If you're a hard rebuild, your goal is to accumulate as much value as you can, but you cannot afford to be playing any value you have on running backs. If you do, you are absolutely risking just bottoming out your value portfolio. Yeah. And it's not worth the risk. There's nothing about a hard rebuild that tells me to buy running backs. And that's mostly common knowledge in Dynasty, but nobody ever explains the why. And the why is because of the volatility, and the why is because you have this much value to play with. Don't use this.
And this much value that you have to play with is rookie picks, which are guaranteed to increase in value. What are you generally giving up as a hard rebuild to invest in any positional asset? One of your picks, because that's usually the only thing that you have.
If you went broke, Nathan, and you had $100 left to your name, would you go to a casino and throw it into slot machines?
Some people would. I would not.
That is the hard rebuild equivalent of buying running backs. So let's talk about future value team next, though.
Yeah, so future value is very interesting. And one of the things that I'm going to recommend to you guys is that you lock down your foundational positions first. And that is quarterback and wide receiver. That, to me, again, those are the foundational positions because they are the most insulated, right? We know this. We talk about this all the time. It's as simple as that. I have seen future value teams that have significant running back value currently on their team because not all future value teams are devoid of positional talent. They just don't have enough of it to compete this year. They just have to, turn some of their future picks into assets later to eventually contend. But some of those highly valuable assets that those future value teams have on their roster are running backs. I've seen it. It's rare. It doesn't happen super often. I just did a team blueprint a couple days ago where I saw it and it threw me. Yeah. Because I generally don't see future value teams with Bijan and Breece Hall. But pivot to wide receiver and quarterback for insulation. That is what I will recommend for this archetype specifically. If you have a future value team where you're not going to contend this year, but you have multiple producing running backs, and outside of that, not that much, why even flirt with the idea of riding with those guys for the entire season? Look, I like Breece Hall. I like Bijan Robinson. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. Heck, I like Jonathan Taylor. I would never, ever, ever recommend as a future value team that you ride with those guys going into the season because I would have told you multiple years ago that Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift, if you had those on your teams, those are cornerstone guys. You do not want to move off of them. And it screwed you.
Yeah.
I know the times are different, and I know that Breece Hall and Bijan and Gibbs are guaranteed certified studs for the next 7 years. But if we're being realistic, at least one of them isn't going to pan out.
That's almost always true. On a dual elite QB team, this is kind of how we build our teams. This is our preferred way of building a dynasty team. It's obviously personal. It's subjective. But we prefer to build quarterback, build wide receiver, get an elite tight end, and then fill in running back. I mean, when you're looking at production data for running backs last year even, you're looking at the guys that averaged over 16 points per game. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs in there, and you've got Breece Hall, and then you've got Chris McCaffrey. But then you've got guys like Kyron Williams, 4th or 5th round, Raheem Mostert, dirt cheap, Alvin Kamara, pretty cheap, Devon Achane, 4th or 5th round, Travis Etienne, 4th or 5th round, Saquon Barkley, 4th or 5th round, Rashad White, 6th round. These guys are guys that are all in the same scoring tier, right? Christian McCaffrey, obviously he's up there 24 points per game. Kyron Williams, 21 points per game. All the rest of those guys average between 16.3 and 18 points per game. And you do not have to have one of those top 3, top 4 running backs to win your league. And then you've even got this tier from like 16 points to 14 points where you've got Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, James Conner. Tons of veterans there, right? So you can fill in, not invest a ton of value at your running back position, and still be fine and win your league. Because really, unless you have Christian McCaffrey, there's not going to be a running back single-handedly winning you a Superflex Dynasty League. With the amount of parity that there already is, and when you're talking about a dual elite QB, and having 2 quarterbacks and facing 2 quarterbacks every week and having two or three flex spots with the amount of wide receiver production we see in today's NFL, I don't think you're going to have a running back winning your league. So with dual elite QB, build your quarterback, build your wide receiver, and then build your running back. That's how we typically approach those. So
yeah, and wide receiver factory is kind of the inverse of that. We want to at least ensure that you're safe at QB. You don't have to have the best of the best at quarterback. You don't have to even be close to an elite value or dual elite QB archetype here. When you're wide receiver factory, in theory, you have plenty of insulated value at the wide receiver position that you can spread out across other positions if you need to kind of repurpose or move those guys around. So just make sure, you're safe at quarterback at least. And then it is safe to invest in running backs with 2 to 3 year guaranteed situations, or going and getting those cheap veterans that have already fallen off the age cliff but are still productive, right? I'm thinking about my James Connors, my Alvin Kamara's, my Tony Pollard's, which is funny. Tony Pollard isn't even old. My Austin Eckler, Zach Moss, even he is probably going to be a productive vet this year. Joe Mixon is relatively cheap right now. So those are kind of the guys that I'm thinking of there. And again, your 2 to 3 guaranteed situation years, those are your running backs that are going into the second year of their career, or maybe even a Breece Hall, I guess, because he's relatively safe. And then who else? Jonathan Taylor on a contract. Ramondre Stevenson now on a contract. That's new news. Saquon Barkley on a contract. Rashad White, 2 guaranteed situational years left. DeAndre Swift on a contract. Those are kind of the guys, if you're looking for more affordable ones on the lower side, those are some targets that you could definitely look into with a wide receiver factory. Again, if you're more closer to the elite value side, you can pay up more. If you're more closer to the well-rounded side, then you don't have as much long-term value, then pay for some of those cheaper assets that I mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. A well-rounded team, typically you're going to want to do low-risk, high-reward running back targets. Don't break the bank.
Yeah.
I wrote down 3 low-risk, high-reward running back targets on my phone. I want to see give me 3 of those guys. I want to see if I got any of them.
Ramondre.
Okay.
Tony Pollard.
Okay.
And Derrick Henry.
All right, those were entirely different than what I wrote down. So
really?
We weren't the same.
Wow. Okay.
I had Jonathan Brooks, I had Rashad White, and I had Trey Benson.
Okay.
So there you go.
I was going on the cheaper end.
Yeah, I was going to say
Definitely
we were in a different price
I was
range,
thinking cheap. Yeah.
But again,
those are the cheaper guys.
Low risk.
You buy my guys cheap.
Right. Then there's a ton of lower. There's even lower risk with those because of the price.
Yeah.
But don't break the bank for a well-rounded team for sure when you're talking about running back position. So
yeah. Yep. And then the last one is running back heavy. Not the last one. Second to last one is running back heavy. We already mentioned this, touched on this a little bit. If you're running back heavy, we are always 100% of the time going to recommend that you diversify and insulate your value to avoid a future hard rebuild. Let's not kid ourselves. If you are a running back heavy team, if you have 3 of the top 5 dynasty running backs, I'm freaking out. Yeah. I'm freaking out. I'm comfortable right now. I'm comfortable with the value that you currently have on your team if you have those assets because of what you can get when you move off of at least one of them.
Yeah.
But you need to move off one of them. You have got to get a wide receiver that's on a multi-year deal.
It's our least. The reason on the DVM, Luke, if you could put the DVM up, the reason that running back heavy is right next to hard reload is because you are 2 bad
Risky.
breaks away from having a hard reload. If you're investing in running backs, you're close. And then the elite value team. Obviously, with elite value, these are the best of the best. Do whatever you want, win your league. That's the perks of having an elite value team, right? I mean, we have an elite value team from somebody over on Flock where he has a bunch of good receivers. He has Amon-Ra, he has CD Lamb, he has Jamar Chase, he has good quarterbacks. He's got Trevor Lawrence, he's got, I think, Jordan Love. But then he's got Bijan, Gibbs, and Brees. It's a stupid team. Again, people say that doesn't happen, not in my league, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we see more leagues than you. We see more trades. We know what happens. People, yes, he's probably playing in a home league, but he has an elite value team. And so with him, he's like, should I trade Brees and take for Burrow? I don't know. Like, I would just probably hold. I would, if you got 2 elite QBs or 2 startable QBs, Brees is going to do better for you. I'd hold and I'd flex Brees, right?
Yep.
So if you're an elite value team, do whatever you want. Do it at whatever you want. And then the 1 year reload.
Yeah, 1 year reload is always special. It's the most specialist archetype that we have. It's very unique. But you want to be, if you're investing in running back as a 1 year reload, which I wouldn't consistently recommend, sometimes it makes sense. But generally what I'm doing there is, again, think what is the purpose of a 1 year reload? It's to repurpose your assets and to accumulate value so that you avoid an eventual hard rebuild. So the way that you can accumulate value is not just the giant deals that you make, it's the small value wins. How do you get small value wins? Easy. You buy veterans now, you sell them later to desperate contenders.
Why would you do that on a reload or a rebuild? That is the most narrow-minded comment we get, is that buying veterans on a rebuild's a bad idea.
As long as it's not a hard rebuild.
Well, let me tell you something. A player's age does not tank your team alone. It's their value. Players that have age also have value. And when you play the value market and you flip veterans on a contender and you get small value wins, it's not about the value or what you're investing in or the age. It's about the small value win. Mm-hmm. If you bought, I mean, just as an example, if you bought Aaron Jones at the beginning of the offseason as a rebuild and you've already sold him, you've already made a small value win. Was that a bad idea?
Last year, if you bought Kamara for dirt cheap and you sold him mid-season, did you win or did you lose?
And there's risk with that, but again, it's not a bad idea. So
you do it for the cheap guys. That's why we said cheap, affordable veterans. Is when you're paying for a 29-year-old running back at this point in the season right now, or 3 months ago, how much did they cost? A late second tops.
Right.
Sometimes a couple thirds because people just want Connor off the roster. So what are you out? A third. Okay, cool. Yeah. If it doesn't work out, and chances are it's probably going to work out because we see it happen every single year, with way more risky and questionable assets than the ones we're mentioning right now.
So again, for every type of team, that's how you should handle the running back position. To know what type of team you have, for every dynasty team you have, you can get as many of these as you want now. Flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain when you sign up for sure, and then choose the mother Flocker tier. If the annual one comes with a free team blueprint, which will give you all of this information, give you your archetype, give you your running back strategy on paper from Nathan and I. We'll help walk you through some example deals and go through and target some trades for you in your leagues on the blueprint. And then also, if you have 2 teams, if you have 4 teams, if you have a million teams, you can get as many of those team blueprints as you want. And if you want more blueprints, flockfantasy.com/domain. Like I said, use code domain when you sign up to get as many of these things as you want. Hey, we do have a podcast out now. The podcast is called Get This, a show about fantasy football. You can find it anywhere.
What's that about?
It's about fantasy football.
Oh.
And it's featuring him, I, and 2 of our other domain guys. So it's a I almost said 4-way, but I'm not going to say that. Definitely not going to say that.
Yep,
but it is a good podcast, and we do talk about fantasy football. So you can find that anywhere that you find podcasts. I'll link it down in the description today. But make sure you go check out the podcast, because this is an hour's worth of stuff every week that we don't talk about. We're getting into stuff on the podcast we don't cover on our videos on either channel. Yeah. So if you kind of want that fringe, like more football-y, but through a dynasty fantasy lens.
At the end of the day, we love football.
We do. So check out the podcast again. It's in the description, and we'd love to have you guys. Make sure you leave a good rating for us as well. But we're going to be doing that every week. It's going to be consistent, so we'd love to have you over there as well. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you later.